Well, let's talk about Canada's EV future. Hadrian Mertins-Kirkwood is a senior researcher at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. His work focuses on Canada's shift towards a zero carbon emission economy. Hadrian, good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me back.
So, even before the cancellation of Brightdrop yesterday, there have been questions about the viability of Canada's EV future. Because, before that we had Quebec losing hundreds of millions of dollars when Northvolt went bankrupt. We saw the plans to expand a plant in Bécancour for EV batteries essentially stopped. Are you concerned that Canada's EV future is over just as it begins?
A little bit, yeah. The thing is, there are actually two EV futures we're talking about, right? We're talking about us as consumers buying electric vehicles, driving electric vehicles, and then we're talking about Canada being an industrial producer of electric vehicles. So there's actually two different futures. I think the transition to us as consumers driving EVs, eventually replacing all the internal combustion engines on the road, that's pretty much inevitable. I mean, we can argue about the timeline, whether that's 5 years or 30 years, but we're headed in that direction for sure. Whether those vehicles are built in Canada or not, that's very uncertain. And I think a lot of these developments in the past couple of years have been quite concerning on that front.
Okay, how do you turn things around, though? Because, that certainly is the future identified by the previous Liberal government. That is the future that's been identified by unions, by industry before Donald Trump's election. He has now canceled the EV mandate in the United States. In this country, this government has now suspended the EV mandate for 2026. How do you turn things around if the intent, take the consumer side out of it, but as a creation of an industrial policy for this country, how do you turn it around?
It's really hard, and that's because we're extremely dependent on foreign investment when it comes to EV manufacturing. We don't have a big auto producer in Canada. We have some parts producers that are Canadian-owned, but for the most part, we assemble vehicles that are American vehicles or Japanese vehicles, and then we export those vehicles. But if those companies want to go elsewhere, all we can really do, and what governments have been doing for decades, is try and incentivize them to stay, offer tax breaks, offer subsidies. But if another country makes a better offer or wields a bigger stick, then we don't have a lot of choice, and that puts us in a really difficult position. It doesn't mean we don't have strengths. We do have a very skilled workforce that is relevant. We do have relatively low energy inputs, for example, energy costs, which is important when we're talking about manufacturing. So there are opportunities perhaps, and we can talk more about batteries as an opportunity. But the bottom line is this is not something that is simple to solve, and it's not something that the Canadian industry or the Canadian government can just unilaterally fix.
Okay, not unilaterally, although we do have a government that is very much interested in national projects. And I know that one project that's been put forward to the government, perhaps in more informal channels, is investing in a Canadian-made EV vehicle, owned, created, made here in Canada. What's your thought on that?
I think it's a really exciting idea. It checks a lot of boxes in terms of an industrial strategy, because it's not only about making money in the short term, because I think it'd be hard to make a lot of money in the short term on that project. But you'd build out a lot of capacity. You'd build out the supply chain. You'd build out this sort of R&D infrastructure around it. Could have a lot of spin-off benefits. So I think it's an interesting idea and something worth considering. But as a kind of economically viable replacement for the current industry, I don't think it's there. Ultimately, we sell a lot of our cars internationally. Most of the cars we make, we sell to the U.S., and then we buy cars from the U.S., and to think that a fully Canadian-made EV could be viable without also having significant market access around the world, we just couldn't sell enough in Canada alone. So we really do need to be connected to the global auto market there in that way.
It sounds like more than pessimism, you've actually almost closed the door on an EV future for this country.
I don't think so. I just think we need to be realistic, and I think we need to be strategic. I think the era of us being kind of a branch plant exclusively for mostly American companies, I don't know that that's the future. I don't think we should give up on it. We need to fight to protect these factories, protect these workers, absolutely. But I like the direction we've been moving in terms of looking up the supply chain. Can we be producing electric vehicle batteries in Canada? And then that becomes a really useful commodity. We can sell those anywhere. We don't have to necessarily build the cars in Canada. If we can, we should, but we should be thinking about where we can make a really kind of strategic investments for the long term.
Okay, when you say that, I think about Ontario's Ring of Fire. Of course, there's a vast reserve of critical minerals, but we're still years away from any road reaching it, which of course means then we are years away from any meaningful production of those critical minerals. How does an investment in that now make economic sense, or is it just hoping that one day it will pay off in the future?
Yeah, well, it's not only those logistical issues. Of course, there's real issues around Indigenous rights and title that we need to be respectful of. But I think you raise a good point, which is this stuff's years in the future, and that's exactly what governments are supposed to be doing. Is thinking about how can we have a strong economy, a sustainable, inclusive economy in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years. Government's the only one who can do that. The private sector is not making those considerations. Like, yeah, they want to be profitable, but they want to be profitable now. And it may be the case that when it comes to investing in this critical mineral supply chain, investing in, for example, battery manufacturing, it is a long game, and we're going to need government to be involved because it's not going to be profitable in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. So the government has, including today, talked about a sustainable environmental policy. What do you want to see out of that?
I mean, the first thing is that it is a genuine environmental policy, and we're seeing a lot of backsliding right now with the federal government, entertaining a lot of policies, infrastructure around like liquefied natural gas, carbon capture that aren't truly compatible with the zero carbon economy. So let's be clear about what environmentally friendly means. And then thinking big picture that it's, yes, we need to be driving more electric vehicles, but we also need more public transit. We need more active transportation. We need cities where people can live close to where they work. So there's a lot of other angles to come at this transportation and decarbonization angle that provides a lot of opportunities, plays to some of Canada's strengths without getting totally hung up on just replacing cars.
Okay. Hadrian, I always appreciate the time. Thank you for that.
Thank you.